Hollywood Cemetery was designed in 1847 in the rural style rather than the traditional grid layout of older cemeteries. Its path traced over hills and beneath trees, giving it a natural, unplanned look. The cemetery sold its first grave in 1849, but some of the markers are people born as early as 1700. Notable Virginians reinterred here as the cemetery grew. Others came from cemeteries that were lost to urban development. Perhaps the best-known monument is a 90-foot granite pyramid completed in 1869, dedicated to the 18,000 Confederate enlisted men buried nearby. General George Pickett is buried here, near the men he once led in combat. Many of the prominent Confederate commanders from the war between the states are at rest here, including Generals John Pegram, Jeb Stuart, and John M. Bowdoin. Hunter Holmes McGuire of Winchester served as staff surgeon to General Stonewall Jackson and the Second Corps. After the war, he came to Richmond to be professor of surgery at what is now MCV, and his knowledge of gunshot wounds earned an international audience. He had 10 children. General Fitzhugh Lee commanded the cavalry of the Army of Northern Virginia and went on to be the first post-war Democrat elected governor of Virginia. Serving in the U.S. Army both before and after the Civil War, Fitzhugh Lee personified the wish of his uncle, Robert E. Lee, that the North and South would peacefully reconcile. West Point graduate, Secretary of War, Senator of Mississippi, President of the Confederacy. Jefferson Davis is memorialized in Hollywood Cemetery with a statue that faces east towards the city. Nearby, the graves of his wife, Verina Howell Davis, his 4-year-old son Joe, and his daughter Winnie, who was said to have died of a broken heart, longing for her forbidden suitor, a Northern abolitionist. Here lies John Randolph of Roanoke, a shrill and feared orator among America's founding fathers. He loved freedom, he freed his slaves, but as an aristocrat, he did not tolerate the idea of equality. His remains were moved from Charlotte County to Richmond in 1879. James Monroe served as our 5th president and held more high offices than anyone else in American history. He is remembered for the Monroe Doctrine, which helped shape nations of the Western Hemisphere. Monroe opposed slavery and was more popular in Richmond than Jefferson, who fled town when the British approached. John Tyler, U.S. President from 1841 to 1845, a strong defender of limited federal power. He vetoed most bills passed by Congress. He was condemned by Northern politicians for bringing Florida and Texas into the Union. Before the Civil War, he opposed secession and died in 1862 while serving in the Confederate Congress. A name familiar to Richmonders, Louis Ginter had already made and lost 2 fortunes before making millions selling Richmond Gems, pre-rolled cigarettes. Richmond's wealthiest citizen, his footprints are seen all over the city. The Richmond Daily Times, the Jefferson Hotel, Ginter Park, the Louis Ginter Botanical Garden, St. Andrew's Church, and Union Theological Seminary. Hollywood Cemetery is slightly west of downtown, behind the Oregon Hill neighborhood just north of the Robert E. Lee Bridge. Take the Belvedere exit off of I-195 or take Belvedere south from I-95. The cemetery is open from 8 to 5 daily or until 6 during daylight savings time.